Hello, I'm Ted Carr from Firewalkers and Retire Happy. Thank you for joining me for my presentation titled Financial Modeling for People Who Are Later to Fire. Pretty catchy name. Now, I included Later to Fire in the title because I want to call attention to the fact that it's never too late to pursue financial independence. My presentation, though, actually can be applied to everyone's benefit. Now, before I begin, I want to remind you that I am not a financial professional and am providing this content for informational purposes only. I recommend consulting with a financial professional to help you make informed decisions. Now, just FYI, some of the calculations I make in this presentation use a calculator, actually a future value calculator that I get from calculator.net. And by the way, I'm recording from a brand new location where the street is much closer than my old recording location, and I'm in a bit of a construction zone. So if you hear any construction noise, please excuse those unintended sound effects. And now, let's get on with the presentation. Here's our agenda. We're going to start with the objectives, review what I call the FIRE financial framework, review our use case assumptions, and there's just one use case, and I'll take that use case and create what I call the baseline case. I'll follow that with scenario 1, where I show the effect of decreasing expenses by 10%, and then scenario 2, where we increase income similarly by 10%, and then we'll wrap up. Any questions? Let's begin. So the objectives are, we're going to model a later to fire use case under different scenarios to see the impact on achieving FI. And by modeling, I simply mean I put together a set of variables and I plug in values into that set of variables. And that's a financial model. And it's very subjective. It's just the one that I've created. And the second objective is I want to show the relative effect of lowering expenses versus increasing income on what it takes to achieve financial independence. So let's begin with a review of what I call the FIRE financial framework. The definition of financial independence has two components. First, having enough income generating wealth to cover expected life expenses without the need of earned income. And the second definition is having long-term, reliable sources of passive income. Now, I see that there are three strategies when it comes to achieving financial independence. The first, and these are the strategies of the FIRE movement, by the way, FI is based upon the 25 times and 4% safe withdrawal rate rules. And if you want to learn more about those, I did a presentation that's called Financial Independence, where I do a deep dive into both of those rules. The second strategy is to increase what we call the gap, where savings equals income minus spending. Now, just how you go about doing that are the tactics, and they're outside the scope of my presentation, as is the third strategy, which is invest efficiently. And everyone in the FIRE community believes in investing in a low-cost, efficient manner. Let's turn to the assumptions for our use case. We're assuming that the person is age 50 and that they want to retire at age 62 in 12 years. They are currently employed and they have saved $175,000 in their 401k. They project that their retirement expenses will be 80% of their pre-retirement expenses. And when they reach age 62, they're not planning to move or relocate. And the rest of the assumptions, as you'll soon see, appear in the baseline use case. And here it is. And some of these additional assumptions are filled in. For example, I said that they were going to invest 50% in the S&P 500 and 50% in the U.S. 10-year, and those are average 10-year returns, and a blended rate of return is 6.25%. So that's an example of another assumption that goes into the use cases and the scenarios. So the person is earning $85,000 a year, and they have expenses of $75,000 a year. That yields a savings rate of 11.8%, which translates into $833 per month. Now, they want to retire in 12 years or 144 months at 6.25%, investing $833 a month. The future value of that turns out to be $178,013. Their $175,000 401k, also assuming a 6.25% rate of return, will be worth $362,230 in 12 years. The combined future value of their monthly savings and their 401k is $540,243. Now, their living expenses are down from $75,000 to $60,000 because they're assuming they can get by with only 80% after they retire. Now, they're also planning to take early Social Security in 12 years, and they estimate that even with reduction, they'll still be getting $2,000 per month or $24,000 per year. Now, the good thing about that is that their annual living expenses are reduced from $60,000 to $36,000. Why does that matter? Because when you multiply 25 times your annual living expenses in retirement, with $36,000, it's only $900,000 to achieve FI. If it's $60,000, I believe that number is $1.2 million. So it's quite a big impact of having that Social Security to reduce the amount that you need to achieve FI. Now, unfortunately, even with their 401k and their savings, they're still $359,000 short of being at their target of $900,000. So this is where the fun begins. As I say, we apply the what ifs or the scenarios to see how are they going to finesse it so they can get closer to achieving financial independence in 12 years. Scenario 1, reduce expenses by 10%. And reducing expenses is very powerful and very popular within the FIRE community, and you'll see why in just a minute. So I'll review just the things that have significant impact in terms of changes. So we've reduced our expenses from $75,000 to $67,500, which is a 10% reduction. The good thing is that increases our monthly savings from $833 to $1,458, which translates into, look at that, $311,557 versus $178,013. That's a huge difference by reducing your expenses by 10%. The 175K 401k is still at $362,230. The total future value has gone from $540,243 to $673,787. Now, here's where we get some real passing power when we're looking at financial independence. And that's where you take the $67,500. They say we want 80% of that. That's down to $54,000. And that's something that you can live on. I know from experience. You can live on $54,000 a year. Now, they still want that early Social Security. That takes their net needed for annual retirement expenses to $30,000 instead of $36,000. That means instead of $900,000 to achieve FI, they're down to $750,000. And when you subtract their future value of $673, they're only off the mark by $76,213. They have bought themselves almost 10 years by reducing their expenses by 10%. That is the power of reducing your spending. Okay, now let's take a look at if you were to just simply say, well, I want to increase my income. I have an opportunity to increase my income. Let's look at that only. We'll keep everything else the same. Okay, so the income has gone from $85,000 to $93,005. Expenses are still the same at $75,000. Their savings have gone to $1,542 versus $1,458. That gives them an increase in the future value of their monthly savings of $329,528 versus the $311,000 that was in scenario 1. Not that much of an increase, unfortunately. We keep the 401k the same. The total future value of savings and the 401k has grown to $691,758 versus the $684,148. Again, not a huge difference from increasing their income by 10%. Again, how they do it, that's a tactic. We're not going to go through all the possibilities of how you increase your income. The estimated annual retirement expenses are back at $60,000. Still want to take that early Social Security. We're back at $36,000 or $900,000 to achieve financial independence. A shortfall of $208,242. And by increasing their income by 10%, they've only knocked off 4.2 years versus 9.8. So I think you can see where we're heading with this analysis. And again, this is just to illustrate, kind of the relative effect that some of the decisions or strategies that you want to apply to your situation, what impact they have on what you can do and what you decide to do. Okay, the takeaways: lowering spending is powerful. It increases your savings rate, and a lower cost of living reduces the amount of time to achieve FI. Lowering spending does not take more time. It's something you can do now. And those three things, I think, really illustrate and drive home why lowering spending, finding ways to be more frugal, is probably the first and most popular thing that people in the FIRE community do when it comes to trying to figure out how to achieve financial independence in as few years as possible. When it comes to increasing your income, you grow your savings faster, you have higher income, reduces the amount of time needed to achieve FI, but not by as much. I think ideally, you'd like to do both. You'd like to lower your spending and increase your income. I think if you were to put those two together, if I'd done, like, say, a scenario 3, if I said increase your income by 10% as well as lower your spending, it would have been easier to make up that shortfall that was present in the first scenario where we lowered the expenses. So again, you can play with these variables and kind of see what the effect are of doing these different strategies, how you apply them, and then you can figure out how you go about doing them. Again, that's not what this presentation is all about, because I said the overarching goal is to increase the gap by lowering spending and increasing income. So that's going to wrap up this presentation. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join me. I hope you enjoyed it. And one more thing I want to leave you with, and that is that there's a really neat calculator at a website called playingwithfire.com. And it is sort of a comprehensive, simple calculator that if you plug in the values, it will tell you how many years it'll take for you to achieve financial independence. It's not perfect. It has a few limitations, but if you're curious, you want to get involved with this, play with the numbers a little bit, that playingwithfire.com retirement FI calculator is a lot of fun to work with. So at this point in time, this is Ted Carr. I want to wish you all the best. I hope you're staying well, and I look forward to having you join me in my next presentation. Take care and all the best.